Whenever things got rough, I always remember what my father used to say.
Running a business does test a man, my son.
The character of a man and the character of a business are not very different, are they?
Yes. But when the chips are down, we must stand up. Dust ourselves off and motor on.
Dad always said, there are no shortcuts and no quick profits.
There are no free lunches, are there? There is only one
Right way.
PPFAS Mutual Fund. There's only one right way.
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme related documents carefully.
Good evening and welcome. A few sessions back, we saw a video by a person called Tony Seba. I guess you would remember. And one session after that, we discussed the implications, or we tried to play both sides, trying to figure out whether what he is saying is right or wrong in the context of energy and transportation. But today we are diving a bit deeper into transportation, or what I would call personal mobility. Typically people talk about auto, but reason why I am calling this personal mobility is, we'll come to that in a minute, because it's slightly broader than auto, and one has to look at the whole thing in context rather than looking at auto in isolation. I'll spend a few minutes on this chart. It's a world map, obviously. At the back, if numbers are not visible, 22 is the number over India and 808 is the number over United States. So what do these numbers represent overall? These are the number of vehicles per 1,000 people in the population. So America has 808 cars for every 1,000 people in the country. We have 22. This is as on 2014. Obviously today the number would be a bit higher for India, but just for context. The world average is given over here. It's 180 vehicles per 1,000 inhabitants. Europe overall has, the Western European countries have 569 per 1,000 people. Australia 718. This is Russia 354. China 102 to 232 is for these countries over here. Roughly China is 5x us and US is maybe 40 times us, or 35 times our vehicle population. So if you just were to look at this one slide and get excited about auto in India, saying, oh, we have long way to go, even if we don't reach here, even if we reach 100, 150, there is so much of market yet to be captured in India. And again, historically, if you see, among the biggest wealth creators in India have been companies like Bajaj Auto and Hero MotoCorp, erstwhile Hero Honda, and Maruti. So just by looking at this chart, just go out and buy Maruti and Hero and just stay invested for a decade or 2 decades. So is that the answer? So that's the premise. So we have looked at top down from the technology side. Now we are also looking at these factors and looking at other things which are happening. So one interesting thing to note is that India has a lot of two-wheelers. So 22 number just refers to cars. If you include bikes, then it's 130. So there is a stark difference there itself. So, in the US, when you have 808, most of them are cars, or all of them are cars, except for the few guys riding Harley Davidsons for hobby. They don't have a mass market two-wheeler thing. So in India, if you include two-wheelers, the number goes up to 130. So just 22 is an aberration, and given the shorter commutes, given the less extreme weather in winter, given the fact that we have narrow lanes and congestion, two-wheelers is a preferred mode for a lot of people, and given the price sensitivity also. So this is essentially the question, given that there is so low penetration, and also if you look at Maruti's numbers of late, it has had a phenomenal run in terms of the sales growth, and also for many of their models they have quite a bit of waiting period. So you have some visibility going forward also. So this is one side of the story. We'll also look at in depth the other side of the story. The lady here is the CEO of General Motors, Mary Barra. So she's made a statement that the auto industry in the next 5 years, next 5 to 10 years, will see as much change as has not been seen in the last 50 years. This is the statement that she is making. So Tony Seba we can dismiss as an academician or as a Stanford professor or economist, someone who does not run a car company, but here when the CEO of General Motors makes this statement, you can't dismiss that lightly. Also, let's listen in to what our minister, Mr. Piyush Goyal, has to say. Pardon the video quality, this was the best available for a very significant CII event. The lips and the audio do not match, there's a mismatch, but audio is quite clear, so you will be able to figure out what he's trying to say.
I've been educating myself. I've been to grid managers in different parts of the world, personally gone and discussed with experts in this field. And today I feel very empowered that India is absolutely well set to prepare itself for the grid in a manner never done before in the world. We had a committee of experts, POSOCO and PGCIL, the grid manager, the grid operators. Everybody sat down and they've come out with a document which will integrate 175 gigawatt of renewable power, which is our 2022 target, efficiently without any problems maintaining grid frequency. And that document, by the way, is in public domain. It's not in my files. We've put it out for the public to give comments, criticize, whatever, add value. And wherever we get any criticism, we look at it again. Wherever we get any value add, we keep revising it. It's something which we are doing through a very great deal of stakeholder consultation. Having said that, we must also remember we will have about 50 gigawatt of hydropower by 2022. So effectively, our renewable will be 225 gigawatt. And that by itself will be about 500 million units in the country out of about 1.5 trillion by that time, or 1.7 trillion by that time. So we will effectively be close to 25% and we are conscious of that. Of course, hydro has less challenges on integration. In fact, it can be a solution rather than a challenge. But what India is doing, I'm happy to share with all of you, is something very different. We are trying to introduce electric vehicles in a very big way. Much as Mr. Kirloskar doesn't agree with me on that and doesn't like the idea very much, but we are introducing electric vehicles in a very big way. And we are going to make the electric vehicle just like the LED program, self-sufficient, self-financing and not dependent on government subsidies. So we can look at a large-scale ramp-up rapidly. And the idea is that by 2030, not a single petrol or diesel car should be sold in the country. Using that battery storage, which will be used to power these electric vehicles, we believe we'll be creating a natural hedge, a storage capacity in the national grid, which will help us through demand side management to manage greater and greater degree of renewables. And of course, then there are those typical programs about whether we can move the farmer out of the grid and put him through solar pumps and solar agricultural facilities, so that that kind of demand also, which they would love to get in the day, can be met by larger and larger renewable. So we are looking at innovative solutions, and that's where in fact the theme of your program today, the future of globalization, where India is going to lead the world. We are not going to follow what the others tell us to do. We are going to tell the world how it can be done.
So if we remove the face, essentially we hear again Tony Seba speaking, right? If you recollect the videos earlier. Today when we almost sell zero electric vehicles in India, to make a statement then in about 12 to 13 years time, we will have zero sales of petrol and diesel vehicles in the country, is a very bold statement to make. So one side we have seen under penetration, we have seen Maruti's numbers, we have seen the growth. The other side, whether it's regulators, whether it's technologists, whether it's auto executives, all of them are saying the world is changing. Don't expect that the future will look like the past. So that brings us to this interesting problem. If we are to participate in auto, what do we buy? On top, we have General Motors, which sells about 63 lakh cars on its own. With its joint ventures, it sells 1 crore vehicles a year. Market cap of $50 billion. Tesla, which sells 76,000 vehicles, market cap of $50 billion. Both are at the same level. This is at a price earning of 5 on top, dividend yield of 4.5%. This is a loss making company at bottom. And you have Maruti, which sells 25% as many vehicles as GM on its own, and just about 15-16% on a total basis, which has a market cap which is 60% that of General Motors. Price earning ratio of 30. And you have people saying in 12-13 years, the business is essentially over. The internal combustion engine, petrol, diesel fired engines. So what do you buy? Do you buy Maruti saying under penetration, long runway, nothing can go wrang, electric vehicles are too expensive right now, it will take a very long time before this happens, and what Mr. Goel says is, assuming he remains the minister or the same policy continues for 13 years, governments keep changing their minds, a different policy may happen or execution may not happen. We don't know what the world is. So, as is typically the case, in my presentations I raise more questions than give answers. So, today it will be something similar, but let's look at some interesting data points relating to this. So, essentially we have this problem, GM, Maruti or Tesla, and mind you, this is a very important sector for investors, it's a very important sector for countries, for currencies. Just to give you a perspective, smartphones are a $400 billion market, annual sales. Auto or cars is $1.6 trillion. So it's a 4x bigger market than smartphones. And today the largest market cap company, Apple, is essentially a smartphone making company, and it's working on a project relating to auto. So reason is that from such a large scale, they have to address a large market. They can't get into small segments and move the needle. So it's a very big market per se, globally. Let's look at a country, Germany. So the head of the government of Germany said that directly or indirectly, auto accounts for 1 in 7 jobs in Germany. Now, a lot of people say it's an exaggeration, but this is what Merkel has said. It accounts for 14% of German GDP and 18% of their exports. So, depending on how things move, the value of euro, the economy of Germany, all these things will get affected by the change that is happening. Again, the reason why I am talking about personal transportation and not auto or not cars is that essentially we are talking about individuals getting from point A to point B. Now, that can happen in a variety of ways. So, it's cars, of course, but there are also other means. So, this is a kaleidoscope of India. So, you have these chakadas which run in Gujarat, or you have the state transport buses, you have overloaded two-wheelers, metro rail, people walking, people on bicycles. So, various things are there. So, to see where we are headed, we can't ignore all the factors that are there. Apart from the various modes of transport, what is also happening is a lot of changes happening in this space. We have seen Tony Seba's video after those presentations just in the last week. He's come out, he and one co-author have come out with a updated report. It's a maybe 65-page PDF which is there on the internet for those who are interested. And he's become even more aggressive with his predictions. He's talking about maybe 80-90% of miles traveled by individuals happening by these app-based things rather than people owning their cars. So, he is talking about a very dramatic shift happening in the transportation space. Just to understand the auto industry, this is a chart of the best selling models in USA. The best selling model accounts for 4.3% of the US market, and this 60% is others. So, you can see how fragmented the market is. Now, this is very unlike some other things, like if you go to the marketplace to buy smartphones, you will have some 4 or 5 variants of Apple, 3 variants of Apple, and you will have some, in any given market, you will have some 4 or 5 dominant Android players. So, essentially these players will account for most of the market. This is an extremely fragmented industry, especially in the US. So, this is based on models. If we look at even based on companies. So, highest market share is whatever 17-18%. No one has more market share than 17-18%. And this is for USA. If we look at globally, the biggest car maker is just 12%. Again, this is somewhat old data, but it gives some perspective of how fragmented the market is. And the rest, which is too many others who could not find place on the chart, are still 27%. So many people fighting for market share. This is very different from what is there in India. So, here you have slightly less than half market share with Maruti. Despite Tata's making attempts, Hyundai, General Motors, Renault, Nissan, various companies trying to even enter the smaller market, smaller car segment, they have not ceded too much of market share over the years. So, this is again an interesting point and something worth investigating further as to we saw this chart on a $166 billion sales, these guys can only eke out less than $10 billion of profits, whereas these guys can earn more than or somewhere about 10% on the sales. It's worth noting that these guys sell cheaper cars, small cars, which traditionally are thought to be very low profit vehicles. So, General Motors builds smaller cars just to be in that space, not to make profit. They make profit on SUVs and pickup trucks and all of those things. So, how is this company able to run a small car business which is traditionally thought to be having poor economics in such a good way? One answer could be the market dominance. So, as I said, I will raise more questions and answers. So, question 1 is, how much people transportation will be required 5 years out or 10, 12 years out? If you have been following Elon Musk on Twitter, or if you have read news about him, apart from his electric car company, solar roof, space exploration, he's now started a tunnel company, a digging company. He calls it the boring company. This is to create an underground network of tunnels to essentially take cars from one place to the other. So people asked him, why are you doing all these things? His answer was that if people get access to self-driving technologies, or if going from or these ride-hailing apps and so on, a lot of people who are effectively imprisoned in homes will want to move out. So, physically challenged people, elderly people, children, if a safe, accessible mode of transport is available on demand, they will want to do more and more things. So, kids would want to take piano classes or go for some sporting activity. So, even if parents are not around, if a safe and convenient mode is available, they will head out of the home. So, the estimate is that a lot more people will want to commute as compared to what it is right now. Right now what happens is, if you are driving the car yourself, and if it's a long commute, you will say, okay, I'm not going to this movie tonight, or but if you just have to sit in the seat and maybe be on your phone till you reach your destination, then people may choose to opt for it. The other question about personal transportation is how much will be urbanization, and reason why this is important is that urban personal transportation is very, very different from rural personal transportation, and from all indications urbanization is increasing. More and more people are living in cities as compared to villages. So, in an urban environment, car demand is not just a function of affordability. Anecdotally, for example, in my own building, the number of car demand is not whether people have money to buy a car or not. It's whether they have a parking place or not. Again, a lot of people who stay in the suburbs and work in town take the train not because they can't afford a car, but because roads are so congested that that they don't want to waste half their life sitting in the car. In a country like Singapore, the licenses are auctioned. You can't, so there are fixed number of cars, and whoever bids the most gets to use a car, other people have to use a public transportation. Again, even if you own a car, to take it out on the road, depending on the time of the day, there's a congestion charge for use of a particular road. So those kind of things keep coming in, which drive auto demand. It's not just a question of GDP per capita or penetration in terms of number of cars per people and so on. So one is how many people will live in cities, more and more it seems right now. How much will be served by metro, rail and buses? If you look at what our government is doing currently is each major city is having its own metro rail project. So as these become more and more popular, most likely we'll see a hub and spoke kind of system where from your residence to the nearest metro station, you maybe go by a ride hailing app or just get into a taxi, and again you get down and then either walk it down or again get a ride hailing vehicle. Mind you, this is again not a question of affordability or anything else, it's just time saving and congestion avoiding mechanism. So this one question, how much of personal transportation will be by ride hailing app versus by own vehicle, changes things dramatically. Just think about it. If I am going from my residence to work and back by my own car, the demand is 1:1. For one individual, you need one car, which is the US situation. 800 cars per 1,000 people is effectively 1:1, because if you eliminate people who don't have driving licenses, kids or visually impaired, then effectively it's 1:1. Every individual has a car. On the other hand, if I use, let's say, Uber or Ola to go from my residence to office and back, that one car, even if it serves 5 passengers in a day, the demand comes down by 80%. And 5 is an underestimate. Obviously, it will take far more passengers. It's not just ride hailing, there are these Uber pool kind of concepts, ride sharing and all of that. So the demand goes off a cliff, and which is what explains this valuation. People just do not believe that General Motors will be able to even maintain the current sales, leave aside growing sales. People are fearing that US auto sales will fall off a cliff. In rural areas, maybe there will still need to be a 1:1 relationship. Each person will need their own cars. But in urban areas, the number of people taking these apps is growing at a very rapid clip. So just one random data point, probably the number of Uber rides in New York City have grown 3-fold in a year. I read it somewhere, need to check on that, but the rides hailed are increasing exponentially. And another data point, the DMV or Department of Motor Vehicles in US, which gives out these driving licenses, has been seeing a decline in number of people wanting driving licenses. So leave aside owning a car, if people can't be bothered to take a driving license, they'll obviously not be buying a car somewhere down the road. So that is the fear that is giving this low valuation for developed country and especially US car company valuations. Then we come to a question, how quickly will electrification of cars happen? Do we believe Mr. Piyush Goyal, Mr. Tony Seba, Elon Musk, or are we on the side of apparently Mr. Kirloskar who says all this is nonsense? We will keep our partnership with Toyota and keep making the internal combustion engines in the future. So when Mr. Goyal is saying we will not sell a single car which is petrol or diesel by 2030, question is who is setting up a plant to make batteries today in India? I don't see anyone who started this. At what cost? Meaning, are we seeing a clear decline in battery costs going forward in India? Will it be a monopoly kind of situation or an oligopoly kind of situation? So right now, globally, there are a handful of players who are capable of capable of making lithium-ion batteries at scale. LG Chem and Samsung and Foxconn and Tesla and so on. So maybe there are 5 players or 10 players. It's not as fragmented as what we saw the auto industry. So if this is to happen, probably we could see a huge round of consolidation in the auto space. So most likely in the early stages at least, I see there will be few players. So BYD and some others, GM is somewhere ahead in terms of its R&D. The trouble is that in India, people have been making noises. On the ground, I don't see things happening. So immediately after this speech of Mr. Goyal, Elon Musk tweeted out saying this is amazing. India is planning on going complete electric by 2030. And Anand Mahindra replied to him, at least now Elon Musk, you should come to India. Why are you leaving the entire market just to us? So that makes for good PR and it makes for a excellent news story. But so far what I have seen from Mahindra's is the Reva electric car equivalent. One is not seeing a gigafactory kind of effort happening here. Again, where is the charging infrastructure? So just like we have HPCL, BPCL pumps, we'll need charging stations or battery swapping stations at least on highways. If we think in cities, people will charge at homes or in close to offices. But on the highways, at least we need this infrastructure. What is happening on that, we don't know as of now. Again, whether those leasing models, which seems most likely given Mr. Goyal's description that the same battery could be used to stabilize the grid and use it for renewable electricity as well. Another question for which there is no clear answer as of now is, so one is if autonomy comes, surely people will want to commute more. If the hassle of driving yourself is taken away, people will want to commute more. You just get into the car and say where you want to go. That is one. Again, more people will want to commute. Children, elderly, physically challenged, all of those people will want to commute. Parking becomes less of a problem. Staying near CBD becomes less of a problem. Congestion becomes more of a problem because more vehicles are there. On the flip side, if only computers are driving, cars can drive closer. The signals need to be shorter. So all sorts of things. So whenever I speak to people at Google, they say autonomy may happen anywhere, but we don't see it happening in India soon. So probably the car will go out on the road in the morning and reach the destination past midnight, because people will randomly keep crossing and it will never be able to go ahead. And this is a point which a lot of people make. When cars were introduced, a lot of people called them horseless carriages. But a car is not a carriage without a horse. Various things can happen with a car. Similarly, a lot of people today say driverless cars, but a driverless car is not something like a horseless carriage. Better to use the term autonomous vehicle. Reason is that so many changes can happen in the design, in the functionality. To give you a simple example, instead of all 4 or 5 passengers facing the windshield, you can have a train coach kind of concept. People can sit facing each other and maybe play a game of cards or maybe chat with each other or something like that. So the whole thing changes. Again, how many people do you seat? Do you make changes over there? Do you make things flexible? All sorts of changes are possible in this space. For a long time, the public perception was that Google is the leader in driverless car technology, and a lot of people still have this impression, and maybe they are, I don't know for sure. But the interesting thing is this player, Tesla. The interesting point about autonomous technology is not the hardware. It's not the sensors, it's not the computers which calculate. It is the software. How do you interpret the images coming from your sensors? How do you know that this is a cop asking you to stop? How do you know the signal is red? How do you judge whether this pedestrian is going to cross or not cross? How do you know whether the car which is at the intersection will go before you or after you? Whether the car is waiting for you or is going to go ahead? All these things are important. All these things depend on the software which interprets the images and other signals coming from the whole infrastructure. So everyone knows Google has these cute little cars with that round thing on the roof, and they go around, and they've put various videos and PR material out there. So that's what this company did, a company called Waymo, which is subsidiary of Alphabet now. They said we will create this technology and we will experiment with it. We'll do it on the internal track, then we'll take it on mountain view roads and then extend it further. This first company did something that took a completely different track. It said we are selling electric vehicles to people. We are selling Model S or whatever to people, Model X. And in those actual cars, we will fit in these sensors, self-driving sensors. And we'll keep collecting information from those sensors. So each time a Tesla owner drives on the road, that Tesla owner is effectively giving data to Tesla for its self-driving project. When did he brake? When did he accelerate? When did he turn? What were the mistakes which happened? And also they have their own software of self-driving. Now, a lot of people argue that the hardware that Tesla is using is not as advanced as Google's. But somehow, because they have implemented it in their live vehicles, they have a far more robust data of actual driving in various parts of US and the world as compared to Google. Google has only in their cities where their experiment is going on. Here it's a live environment. It's what IT people would call beta testing. Now these guys cannot say that we are experimenting with people's lives in that sense, but that is what is happening. And Uber, right now it doesn't have sensors, but in all the cabs. But if it was to put sensors in the cab, it would start getting huge amount of data to rapidly improve its software. These last two are fighting each other in court for some data theft and all that. But essentially there are these three players and there are some other companies which are working on this. So this is the biggest question when we talk about car demand. As I mentioned, Tony Seba's latest report, and where he has put estimates for various costs of insurance and maintenance and the life of the car. His estimate is that the way electric vehicle technology is moving, an electric vehicle will have a lifespan of 500,000 miles and somewhere down the line going up to 1,000,000 miles, as compared to internal combustion engine, which has maybe a 200,000 mile outer limit currently. So if the life increases by a factor of 2.5 to 5 times in electric vehicles, and all these sensors come in where accidents go down, insurance rates go down, if large fleets are available on demand, the necessity of owning a car, especially in a urban or suburban kind of environment, will completely evaporate. Only in rural areas where density is very, very low, you will not have these fleet cars with a short enough wait time. So again, as I said, if 5 people start using Uber, the requirement for 4 cars go away. On a very optimist basis, if that one car can service 10 people, then 9 out of 10 cars go away. So again, in the map where we saw 800 over here and 22 or 130 in India, question is, will 22 and 130 move towards 800, or is 800 moving towards that 100? 800 moving towards that 100 is a real possibility, because if 10 people share a car, you have a ratio of only 1:10. So how many people will want their own cars? And the ratio of these two will give you the actual auto market of the future. So again, the question is, will Maruti, Toyota, Volkswagen adapt to the new world, or will it all be about BYDs and Teslas? The history is against incumbents. So whenever such a big change has happened, incumbents typically have lost out. Now sometimes they do make the transition, but on most occasions they lose out. So when computing moved from desktop or from large servers and mainframes to personal computers, Microsoft came in, IBM lost out. When things moved to internet, companies like Google, Facebook came in, Microsoft had a tough time, at least initially. Film cameras to digital cameras, Kodak could not keep that dominance. Scooters to motorcycles, Bajaj had a tough time. So each time a big change has happened, or cellular phones to landlines, the landline companies could not move fast enough. to capture the cell phone market. So the history is against incumbents. Some incumbents are doing a lot of work. So Nissan already has a reasonably good quality electric car in the market. GM has a reasonably good quality electric car in the market. But I don't see enough work being done by any Indian company right now. All of them make noises in the presentations, conference calls and so on. But I think they are lagging far, far behind. And a key component of, so it is said that roughly 30 to 40% of the cost of a car will be batteries. And none of these guys are seriously making batteries. And again, even for the rest of the vehicle, drivetrains and sensors and all that, we are not doing too much work here. So it seems that at least in the initial phase, the hundreds of car companies that we have, maybe only 10 or 20 will remain in the initial stages to serve the electric car market. Again, car making is extremely capital intensive. Question is, if we are saying that change is going to come at such a rapid pace, question is who will fund all of this? And the second question is what happens to all the loans and debt funding which is given to existing companies if they are to see such a large transition. So given this thing, it's been some confusion. So one can clearly see Maruti doing well next 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. But what terminal value do you put on Maruti? It is trading at 30 times earnings. Now if it is going to earn well for 5 years, 7 years and then see a very big decline, then can one confidently go out and buy the stock? So that is the dilemma that is there as investors that we face. You have all three variants, internal combustion engine company with a long runway, with dominant position in the market, with a waiting period, which is Maruti. Not very cheap, 30 times earnings. You have General Motors, which is having financial parameters which would be a dream of any investor, 4 to 5% dividend yield, 5 price earning ratio, but which could be facing a huge decline in volumes, and an upstart company which is loved by the early adapters, which is valued at 50 billion and which has sold less than 100,000 vehicles last year. So that's where we stand. Thank you. I'll be happy to take questions.
Indian brand Revo has been there in market for a long time, more than 10-15 years. They have not been able to make any mark. In your perspective, what are the reasons for this?
So reasons are the reasons for electric car not taking off anywhere. One is extremely limited range. When you sit in the car, if you fear that you will not be able to reach your destination or run out of electricity well before you reach your destination, then you will not take such a car. If it is not big enough, if it is not good looking enough, if it doesn't have enough power to accelerate, then you will not buy such a car. So only if you are a hardcore environmentalist who is dead against using fossil fuels, you will go out and buy. That's Reva. Tesla and Nissan Leaf and Chevrolet Bolt and Bolt, both of these. So they changed the paradigm. They said, we'll give you cars which are as good as or even better than the traditional internal combustion engines. Good mileage, good range, good pickup, good to look at. That's what's happened. So these are, Reva is more like a prototype. It's more like a college project which came to market.
Yeah, so in a way, here the company has never been that aggressive or that passionate about developing the electric vehicle as Tesla or the promoter, that guy Musk is. That is the fundamental difference.
True.
You spoke about this big gap between the four-wheeler market and US market, and then when you add two-wheelers, the gap narrows. Now obviously two-wheeler is not a priority in the rest of the world because nobody is talking about that. So what is the impact of this electric cycle on two-wheelers? Do they also follow suit with all of them?
That's a very interesting question, and that's something I grappled with, and that's the reason why I said it's pointless looking at car companies. One has to look at it from a public transportation or a personal transportation kind of perspective. The running cost of electric cars is very, very low, and especially if that electricity is going to be solar generated. Currently, the capital cost is high, but as we have spoken and as most people estimate, battery costs will come down and these will be cheaper. If you are able to go from, let's say, Andheri to Churchgate, you have options. One is take a train, ride a bike, or call a Uber. If a Uber is going to give you a comfortable seat, which is safer than riding a two-wheeler, because obviously car has more crash protection as compared to a bike. Comfortable seat, safer, air-conditioned, sheltered against sun, against rain, at either the same cost as a bike or lower, you will go for a ride hailing. Now ride hailing has multiple things going in favor of it. Electrification, autonomy. Autonomy in India is far away, but just for argument's sake, and ride sharing. So the ride sharing is already here. You are going from Andheri to Churchgate. If someone wants to go from Parla to Churchgate, he will get into your same car. You will share the ride and your overall cost will come down. That is already implemented. So the cost curve is going rapidly towards the cost that you would incur of owning a vehicle, whether a two-wheeler or a four-wheeler. So at some point, it will not make sense owning your own vehicle. If that happens, then it impacts two-wheelers also. Right now it is impacting four-wheelers. Right now, two-wheeler cost is far away. But going forward, and as people's affluence goes up, people want an air-conditioned or a sun-protected, safe mode of transportation. A surprising thing is today car sales are doing better than two-wheeler sales in terms of growth, not in absolute numbers. But if people have that option and if people don't have to pay the full cash amount to buy a car, I think a lot of people would move to these ride-hailing apps.
You know, if you look at Uber and Ola, they are really game changers. And I really don't know why more such companies are not coming up. Because capex is practically nil. It's only the software. And it's a win-win situation for the driver who can earn a lot of money. I mean, I've interviewed a lot of Uber and Ola drivers in Hyderabad, Bangalore, Delhi also. They're earning a lot. And it's easy for them to get a car loan and own the Gaadi. And when you own a car, you look after it. If you're driving somebody else's car, you bash it around. So I personally feel two things could happen. Number one, why more Ola and Uber cars are not coming up, companies? With that, what will happen? The competition will set in. The rates will come down. Right now, whatever they are asking, we are paying. So I think that is one trend which I can see is going to happen in the next few years. The second thing is, I've been traveling to Japan for the last nearly 45 years. And there, say, if you look at Tokyo, Tokyo has got 37 railway systems and more than 1100 metro stations. 90% of the people travel by train. The roads are empty, in fact. At least in the big cities, Osaka, Tokyo, the bigger cities. I mean, private cars is out of the question because the parking costs are so high, and the air is very clean. So, in cities where the public transport is coming up, which is all electric, in any case, I see a lot of that happening, and a lot of these Uber, Ola type. Because today in India, even on two-wheelers, they are offering a ride, which is the Indian desi version of Uber.
Yeah, Mehul, that's an interesting point. What is there for Uber, Ola for cars is happening for bikes. So if one bike can...
Absolutely.
So I have a feeling that, I don't know, I'm asking you this question. Don't you think that these two things will be bigger game changers than before we look at electric and all that, Because the number of cars, as you have very correctly explained, if one Uber, Ola, doing 10 rides a day, it is replacing 4-5 cars at least. And today managing a car is no cheap thing, Parking is the biggest headache. I have come here and I have parked my car more than half a kilometer, nearly 1 kilometer away, which is fine for me because I wanted to have my evening walk. So I'll 1 kilometer to come, 1 kilometer to go. But everybody doesn't have so much time.
So a couple of points on Uber and Ola. Drivers are very, very happy when these companies come into a city for the first time. A lot of incentives are paid, a lot of subsidies are there initially. They get lured into taking loans and getting their cars. And the moment the penetration increases, they take away the incentives, subsidies, and then the pain starts hitting. A lot of people are having problems paying their loan installments today, Uber and Ola. There's a very wonderful article on this in the magazine, I think, Outlook India, Bait and Switch. I've posted a link also on my Twitter feed, so if you want to check it out, it's there. So that is one part. Somehow these guys are not keeping the interests of the drivers in mind too much. Second is, ultimately, there may not be too many ride-hailing apps. I'll tell you a reason why. This is like your stock exchange or any other network effect business, or like a newspaper or whatever. The platform with most number of cars and drivers will be where you will go first. So, in theory, let's say Uber and Ola are there. I start with another app. Let's say our company says PPFAS ride-hailing app, and somehow I convince you to download that app. But if vehicles are not around, you will say, okay, nothing is available. I'll go back to Uber, and they'll never come back to that app. Similarly, drivers will not come on that platform because passengers are not there. So in these network effect type of businesses, there's a huge first mover advantage or first scale advantage. This will only get broken when large companies say that we will start with a fleet of maybe 10,000 vehicles in the city or 5,000 vehicles in the city, where you know for sure that vehicles will be available. Or if taxi unions create their own app. So right now, Uber and Ola have a commission structure of, I believe, about 20% of the revenue. Now that is a very high number. A credit card company works on, a bank works on 2-2.5%, and Master Visa work on a few basis points to match the two parties. So if taxi unions were to come together and create an app where they don't have to shell out the commissions,
and they maintain quality and customer service, then maybe there's a possibility. But otherwise, network effect is too strong for a third player to come in.
See, the thing is, if you look at the cab rides, it's like the airline booking. Most of the people are one or two. So if, I'm making a very ridiculous example, but if somebody has to order 10,000 nanos, it's a very low cost car. And at least two people can come comfortably in a nano. You don't know, some smart guy may want to do it.
Sure, so actually, again, on the size of a car, at a certain point, let's say this ride sharing really picks up, then it may not even make sense to run a, let's say, Swift or Indigo. It may make sense to run a bus as an extreme example. So, if everyone from Andheri to Churchgate route knows exactly where the bus is, and if that person can get on very conveniently, then one driver should service more passengers to increase productivity rather than serve fewer passengers. Right now we are looking at 1:1. Again, our mindset is that of replacing a car and a driver. I will order a cab, I will sit into the cab and I will reach my destination. But if the mentality is to share the ride, then if it's a bigger vehicle, you can take more number of passengers going the same route, and the cost of the driver gets divided by more number of people, and the cost for each passenger comes down dramatically. So we don't know which way it will develop. So all sorts of things are being tried out. Sharing of bike rides to large vehicles, and you have to slide to select the type of ride you want. Effectively, customer acceptance and demand will drive the future direction.
Rajeev, how much does the battery cost have to fall by for electric vehicles to be viable in India? Because the Model 3 which is coming in is at about $35,000. That's an expensive car in India.
So $35,000, effectively you are saying about 25 lakhs or somewhere thereabouts. So if it falls, let's say it's currently about $350 per kilowatt hour or $300. If it comes close to 150 or 100, then I think there is trouble for Indian.
Even if it halves, the value of the car would halve, right? It's only half the cost which is battery.
So for India, Model 3 is not the correct comparison. For the Indian market, you have to look at what is happening in the Chinese market. You have to look at the electric vehicles over there. You have to look at products of BYD and things like that. So Tesla will never compete with the Maruti, or at least right now I don't see it competing with the Maruti. It will compete with Honda and Volkswagen and those kind of companies. Maruti will have competition from Chinese players.
So what is the approximate cost of a BYD car?
You have cars, I believe, in the region of $15,000, $20,000 kind of thing.
And second question on GM. Is the market not putting any value on their electric car lineup of Bolt and Volt? Because they've made significant strides in these as well.
They've made good progress over there, but let's say they are able to completely make the transition to an electric world. But if Uber kills the overall demand, if demand falls 80%, then right now if they are selling X number of cars and the market itself falls by 80%, then it's problematic.
Then Tesla shouldn't be valued at 50 billion, right? Because if cars don't sell, Tesla cars won't sell.
Correct.
So, there's a disconnect there.
So I'm not justifying buying Tesla. I'm not able to understand the valuation of Tesla at $50 billion.
Is Ola and Uber, are they making profit? Is it profitable?
They are currently making losses, definitely in India, and Uber also at a global level makes losses currently. The reason for that is they are spending a lot of money on marketing, on onboarding new drivers, on driving customer adoption. I don't see why the model should not be profitable if all you are providing is the back-end technology and you are connecting the driver to the passenger and taking 20% cut of the overall revenue, then that's a very profitable model. It's just that currently they are spending a lot of money in marketing in terms of rolling out in new cities, attracting drivers, training them, providing equipment and so on. Right now it doesn't make profits.
But take 20% in India. Same will be that globally also.
It's a higher number. It's not like a credit card kind of thing. It's not 1%, 2%. So it will be 5, 10, 15, 20. It's not 1, 2, 3, 4.
Rajeev bhai, so I think there are a couple of things coming together, right? So apart from like EV penetration and all that, you have solar prices really falling, and then obviously you have Uber, Ola with the whole aggregator system. What does that spell for oil prices or fuel prices? Like I feel like that's another big way to sort of play it, right? Like if all of this comes together, it's certainly the end of, you know, high oil prices. What's your view on that?
The oil producing countries are scared. So for so many years Saudi Aramco was private and is still private. Why are they considering listing? Or UAE is setting up huge solar parks and trying to transition to other things. So one is, we will never, or we will not stop using oil very soon. So oil is required for, oil and gas is required for petrochemicals, for fertilizers, for flying planes, running ships. So I don't think a ship will go on solar power. So it will be required in many places, but obviously a big chunk of the demand would go away or would slow down, which would cause prices to remain subdued for some time. So
would you know how much of oil demand is for like automobile?
We can Google it, okay. Either you or I. It's significant.
It's sizable, right?
It's sizable, so it would be 30-40% kind of thing, ballpark. I don't have a precise number, but it's easily ascertainable.
Right, so I feel like right now they're falling because of like a whatever supply shock, but if all of this sort of happens, then I think we could see a world of different oil prices. That, I mean, I feel like that's more playable.
Sure. Also, the data that we have, they also have. So they also want to
70% for transportation.
70% is the number for transportation. So this would include air plus shipping and also. The more relevant number will be land transportation, trucks and cars and things like that. So what data we have, even the oil producing countries have, so obviously they would want to capitalize it upfront and use that money to set up alternative revenue generating businesses or employment generating industries. So I guess even they are working on transition.
51%.
51% is for cars.
That's huge.
Yeah.
I have a thought, I discussed this last time also. So I visited Volkswagen showroom in Dresden, Germany, and they have displayed an electric car and a small car, slightly, it's size of our Jetta. Okay. So they are also aware, they are working on it, and they told me that currently it's 20,000 euros. And I talked to the engineer, looked at inside the bonnet and all. So what I realized is that definitely compared to an internal combustion engine, this is a very small motor. So the inside the bonus is mostly empty. But there is the structure, there are brakes, there are seats, there is steering, there is air conditioning, there are some computers, there is entertainment system, there are rear view mirrors, there are a lot of stuff in the car. So my view is that yes, the incumbents typically have a problem dealing with new technology, but nowadays people are getting more and more aware. So Volkswagen is working on it, GM is working on it, Ford is working on it. They have the network, they have distribution network, they have the manufacturing setup. And I was thinking in terms of Maruti, they are buying Fiat engines, right? So, and you know, typically a car company has a network of vendors. So they have very little capex, and they outsource lot of production. So there will probably some people will survive, some vendors, and if some of these people like Maruti or a Volkswagen or a GM, you know, some of them may be able to survive. They can, you know, it's kind of a situation which happened in a PC. So there is an Intel and there is a Microsoft, and these guys, you know, there were so many computer manufacturers who had different designs, but they were buying the parts and assembling the PCs. They didn't make a lot of money. A major amount of money was made by the the operating system suppliers and the chip suppliers. So there might be a situation in car as well. You know, there will be battery makers who may make money if they have a better technology. The financiers will continue to make money. So if you have to lease batteries or cars, and then there is the guys who are smart in terms of designing and making a good software. They may make money, you know, and some of them may be able to at least mitigate the risk if they are just assemblers, if there is not too much capex. So that's the thought.
Sure.
I don't know if you have analyzed Maruti in terms of how much they make themselves, and you know, which may still be required, like the outer body, the heavy stamping, etc.
So Maruti plus Suzuki was 4% of the overall global market. Fiat again is not a very big player globally, and all of these guys put together, I don't know personally how much work they are doing in electrification, and putting one car in a showroom saying this is an electric vehicle that we have made is not the same as buying thousands and maybe lakhs of acres of land, putting up a factory which can be seen from space, and saying I'll set up 3-4 more of these gigafactories. The effort required to create these things at scale and to perfect the systems, and a lot of these things are there which are happening where, so it's not just electrification, it's electrification plus autonomy plus these app hailing and mapping technologies. So work in all three is required, and a lot of people are doing tokenism. So even Jaguar says we are into electric, which is owned by Tata Motors. Everyone says in investor presentation, not one company will say we are not taking this seriously, except for maybe Kirloskar. So everyone says we are doing it. If you are doing it, have you broken ground on your factory? That is the first question. By which year will that factory be complete? How many cars will you ship out from that factory? And if batteries are such a key component, have you either created a battery factory or have you signed up, committed supply from LG Chem or Foxconn, or who is going to supply you those many batteries at scale? So the question, so if Mr. Piyush Goyal is saying we will not sell one petrol diesel car in 2030, where is the infrastructure? Going on stage and making statements is easy, and I am not doubting his seriousness. Maybe a lot of work is going on behind the scenes, but these questions need to be asked to Volkswagen, to Suzuki, to Fiat, that where are your upcoming factories and which year will your production at scale start and which are your models, which one can see with General Motors, one can see with Nissan. I am not seeing it across the incumbents. A lot of people are doing tokenism. If you are not in the market already, like a Nissan and like General Motors, you have been sleeping till now.
In case of India, at least in US, Tesla is taking the lead and creating the infrastructure, the charging and network. But in India, somebody has to invest that money. So will it be government or private players? So they'll be all waiting for others to start.
Yes, so one way to look at it is, all this is hot air, nothing is going to happen in India soon, buy Maruti still. That is one way of looking at it. The other way is, the world is changing. We can't be immune, and
I'm judging, I'm thinking in a different, what my point is, over time what has happened in car industry is, like even if you have too many brands from different players. So I read an article, during around 2006 when the American car companies were in trouble. So there was a comparison in Forbes where Ford, in US I was quite surprised that they have so many models and so many brands, both Ford, Chrysler and all these three companies. Whereas Toyota was marketing only 5-6. They had Camry, Corolla and some cheaper brands for students. So they had 5-6 brands and they were doing all the volume there. So that was the contrast. The other thing is, at that time Ford had 26 different designs and vendors for that outside rear view mirror, and Toyota had only 3 for all their model. So that kind of consolidation has been happening. So all the car companies are basically having a common platform and they are just changing the outer stuff, minimal stuff to market different types of cars.
It's been happening.
So my point is that could these companies, existing companies, use their existing, anyway they are outsourcing lot of component manufacture. They are taking care of only the big stuff which cannot be done by small vendors. So could they outsource most of it, and when they see these things happening within like Maruti set up a new factory in Gujarat maybe in 3 years time max, which is basically an assembly plant. So they work with their vendors, let's say top 100 vendors, and anyway an electric car is much simpler than an existing car. So I don't see any reason why Maruti or a Volkswagen cannot, or a GM cannot make an electric car. The only thing which is missing, so electric motor can also be outsourced, right? The only thing missing is a good battery. And what I read about a couple of weeks ago is there is a guy, John Goodenough, who invented lithium-ion battery. He's a professor in University of Texas. He has invented a better lithium-ion battery with some glass technology, and he says it will be 3 times more powerful than the existing battery. So I'm wondering that even technology can disrupt Tesla, and they have invested a huge amount of money, and this guy has now announced that he's ready to license his technology to anybody who wants to use it. So it's a very dynamic situation. I'm not what I'm saying is probably existing guys can compete, if the leaders apply their mind.
I am raising questions. At the beginning I said I am not answering it. I am just making a simple point that history is not in their favor.
True.
So digital cameras were invented in Kodak. Leave aside anything else. It's like saying lithium ion and electric cars were invented in Volkswagen and Volkswagen lost out. Here, though, at least Tesla has come from outside. Volkswagen is not the innovator. For whatever reasons, historically the people with existing business have been too slow to react. That's what 50, 100 years of history has shown us. Maybe a few companies will make the transition, and there are exceptions. It's not that everyone loses out when things change. So even IBM has reinvented itself 3 or 4 times in its history in a big way. So I am not saying for certain that all companies will go away. What I am saying is, out of, let's say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, out of these 10, maybe 2 or 3 could make the transition. Very difficult to say that all 10 will exist in the same form 20 years from now.
There's another thing which is interesting, I just want to mention as information. I was surprised that Volkswagen Group owns so many brands, including Suzuki. So they own Lamborghini, they own Porsche, they own Suzuki, and they have Skoda, they have BMW as well, they have Skoda, and they have their own Volkswagen. So they and Suzuki also is, and they have Ducati, etc. So they have got a couple of bike brands as well. So it's a amazing kind of they are playing in. And
Rajeev, one thing is very sure: the land mass on this earth is fixed. Because I can tell you, if you look at Europe, if you look at Korea, look at Japan, look at the cars they are producing, just check out how much is being exported. There the numbers are not, the use within those countries is not going up. And in fact, it's only in the developing countries that like China, India and other countries. While in other countries, the numbers are beginning to drop. And the land mass is fixed. Parking is a problem. Public transport is going ahead in a very big way because of pollution, climate change and all. So I think those factors which you mentioned also are going to play a very big role. Electric thing will be at point number 5 or 6 according to me. Those 3 are very big things. Jagah hi nahi hai udhar khade hone ki. To go to Japan, Korea, nobody uses a car because wahan ghar mein khade hone ki jagah nahi hai. Forget about the car. I mean, I'm telling you the practical thing because I have visited those countries. Same thing in countries like Germany and all that. Those are the ground realities.
Thanks a lot. We'll continue the interaction over drinks and dinner. Thank you.
I always say what we see today. This large new office is years of sacrifice and hard work. Relax. I know it's a tough job, son. Clients can be tough. Times can be tough. Situations can be tough. Half a day. Half a day is all I give you to feel sorry for yourself. Then it's on to the next. You need to have a tough skin.
A tough skin. The stories I could tell you. You see, people tend to see the big picture, the rosy picture. But let me tell you one thing. Being an entrepreneur is, tough.
Son, a business has a life of its own. One bad day at the office doesn't mean the end of the world.
Winners are not people who never fail, but people who never quit.
The sweet smell of success. Half a day. I give you half a day to enjoy it. And then it's on to the next. There's only one
right way.
At PPFAS, we think like Rahul and his father. That volatility is a fact of running a business. And buying equity shares is like owning a part of that business. We use value investing principles to manage your money. This means we invest in the right businesses at reasonable prices and for a longer term. PPFAS Mutual Fund. There's only one right way.
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme related documents carefully.